Hello. Once more, welcome back to Aadit's history, the number one rival to Heimler's history. Today, we're going to go over section 5.2, which is the Russian Empire. Okay, and so, I just wrote down the key terms here and the sections of the chapter. So, pretty much we've got our key terms. We've got the Russian Empire, Yasak, Catherine the Great, Russification, Westernization, and then we've got Peter the Great. Okay. And our sections are just like Russia's expansion, experiences in the Russian Empire, and just like how the Russians saw the empire. Okay, so very simple. Let's get into it. So first, we're going to start off with the expansion of the Russian Empire. So you might remember, right? So all the way back, we started with Kievan Rus. This civilization formed. They adopted tons of things from Byzantine, notably Eastern Orthodox Christianity, which evolves into the Russian Church, right? So very cool. Okay, very cool. But um, now in our last chapter, which was the Mongol moment and the remaking of Eurasia, in that chapter we saw that the Mongols will take over Russia, right? And they're going to consolidate the government, okay? And the Kiev will decline because they'll resist the Mongols, but Moscow is going to be a tax collector for the Russians, and so sorry for the Mongols, and so Moscow is going to become really prominent, and the Prince of Moscow is going to gain considerable influence. So now the Russians are going to they'll go, and they'll go, and they will go and beat the Mongols. Okay, they're going to get independence from the Mongols. See, okay, so they're going to get independence from the Mongols, and the Prince of Moscow is going to start like going over. And he's going to start invading a ton of people. I'm not going to punch the camera again. That was a bad idea. So, um, they're going to go, and they are going to. So you have Russia, and you've got the Prince of Moscow. Okay, and so you've got Moscow is important. Okay. Hopefully this is visible in the actual video. We've got Russia, we've got Moscow. So Russia is going to start basically with Moscow, okay? And then Moscow is going to start conquering the other Russian-speaking areas, right? So they'll invade Russian-speaking areas, okay? Um, and so that's going to just give birth to the very basics of the Russian Empire. And so that's good. That's all good, right? So but like this obviously not nearly all of Russia, right? So you've got like what they're gonna do is they'll start conquer. If this is Europe, okay, here is Europe, and then here is like Asia, and then like Russia is gonna be like let me get another color. Russia's gonna be like this area ish, you know, like Russia will be like ooh, and before like the Soviet Union collapses, they'll even have like over here, um, here, right? They have a ton of land, okay. So basically Moscow-ish is like more over here, kind of. Okay, so what's gonna happen is they're gonna conquer the Russian areas, right? But they're also gonna go over and they're gonna go ahead and conquer more to the east in Eastern Europe and the Baltics, and we're also going to have them go and conquer Siberia, and they're gonna conquer the steppes. Okay, so that's like Mongolia, that type of area. So the important thing is what we need to think about is like, so Moscow's like here, right? Then they're gonna like, so when they're gonna, why will they expand, right? So there's like a couple of reasons. So, um, they're gonna, so like, first of all, you might wonder why anybody would even want to conquer Siberia. I mean, that's at least what I thought when I see modern maps of Russia. I just thought, why does Russia even have Siberia? Because like, it's just like kind of like just barren, like but the important thing is that at this time, like in the international market, you've got fur, which is super important. Okay, so you've got fur, and that's like really expensive. And so, there's like these animals here, right? And that their fur is really expensive, and so Russia obviously wants that. So Russia conquers Siberia, and the thing is, like with the native peoples there, like they're kind of like more isolated, and so what'll happen is that it's like GG easy for the Russians because for them the problem with it is that they have superior weapons, they have superior things like that, and so they're going to decimate the population here. And another thing is that like they're just simply not very numerous. Okay, like probably like Russia here, like this little area over here, is probably way more populous than like all of like Siberia. Okay, um, Siberia I believe was only like 200K people by like of like the indigenous peoples by the 1500s, 1700s ish. Sorry, um, but Russia's just way more populous. So like you just have like less people. They're spread out really thin over a massive amount of area, and they're not very united because they're like different tribes and all. So it's just like way more difficult for them to fight. And just like in the Americas, they're also going to bring disease. So the thing is that even though most of Europe and Asia was living with tamed animals, because over here in Siberia, especially in the more far reaches of Siberia, you're going to have like these people will be more isolated. They're not going to be living with animals as much, like not with um, tamed animals as much. Then this is just going to they're just going to be vulnerable to disease, and just like in the Americas, their populations will be decimated by things like smallpox, things like measles, etc., etc. So this is obviously not good for them. So they're gonna get conquered, and so they will they will like be integrated into the Russian state. Then we've got and so that's why they would invade here. But then why would they invade the steppes, right? So like the steppes are largely security concerns. Even there's some security concerns as well from the Siberia, but it's like big thing with the steppes, right? In the steppes, you've got like the Mongols, you've got the other like nomadic groups, sorry, the pastoralist groups, right? All these pastoral peoples are living in the steppes, right? And frequently, like what they'll do is that they will raid like these like Russian like areas and all, which is not good. So they're gonna so then the Russians they say that okay, so I think there's like a little bit of a concern about security, so they're gonna invade the steppes, and they're going to conquer the Mongols. They're gonna conquer like Mongolia. They'll conquer the other peoples here, and this is really big. Um, was so then the other thing here is that you're going to have Eastern Europe, right? So Eastern Europe, like there's like a ton of like European power. Well, maybe probably not this much, but like Eastern, like in Europe, right? You've got all these like rival powers, and Russia is also going to be competing against those powers, right? And also like you probably got more like Ottomans here-ish, so like this is not at all an accurate image, but um, so but over here we've got like all these different countries, right? We've got like the Hungary, we've got Austria, blah blah blah. So now Russia's like, I want to beat the right because you want to like be stronger, right? Everybody wants to stay strong. So Russia is going to start invading. Like they're gonna conquer like pretty big chunks of land here. So there's gonna be tons of military rivalries here. Okay. So that's pretty much Russia's expansion in a nutshell, and that's how Russia goes from being like really. So this is going to be the start of Russia going from being like this irrelevant random bozo to being pretty important, like even to this day. And so uh, now let's just talk about the experiences in the Russian Empire, right? So um, one of our keywords here is Yasak. Okay, Yasak was essentially a tribute that the indigenous peoples in Siberia, that the peoples of the steppes, that they would have to be paying to the Russians. Okay, and so they're going to be paying this Yasak. Okay, this tribute, and so so this is not going to be great for them because especially in Siberia they're going to have to pay tons and tons of these furs and they're basically going to be exploited a lot because of this, so that's not good. And then um we've got as well, right, the Siberian people are going to lose their way of life because the Siberians um tons and tons of Russians are the settlers are going to come there, right? And so eventually they'll lose their way of life a little bit. And by even in the modern day, Russians vastly outnumber the Siberians in Siberia. And similarly, like even I think it was by like the 1800s, they were already outnumbering like the indigenous Siberian peoples. And then like in the steppes, right? In the steppes, you have the Mongolians, right? They're living and you've got the other peoples as well. Like, I keep saying Mongolians, but you've got these other pastoralist peoples, right? All these pastoralists, but their society, their very foundation of the society relies upon herding animals, sheep, goats, horses, etc., right? They're riding these around, they're moving these around, but but like when the Russians come, right? They're no longer able to just like freely go around. And as a result, they're going to begin to continue to they're also going to lose their way of life. And this is part of the reason, which we'll see more in 5.4, why the pastoralist fade from significance in world history. And so they're going to lose their way of life as well, right? So this is like not good for them. Okay, so the thing is, this seems pretty bad for the Russians, but it wasn't all terrible, okay? So, although for the most part they weren't like that great with religious tolerance, the Russians, there were times where they were. So, Catherine the Great is going to rule, I believe, the 1600s, and Catherine the Great, she's going to go in and she's going to make for Muslims, she's going to make a department that will manage affairs related to Muslims. Okay, and so because there were a lot of Muslims in the steppes, okay, at this time, so this is pretty important. Okay, and we're gonna hear more about Catherine the Great later, but she this is so this is pretty important about her. Another thing is Russification, okay? So, as I said earlier, right, the Russians will push their ideals onto the Russian thoughts will be pushed onto these people. And people will give up their ways of life. So, in the case of Russification of like Siberians, for example, they many of them would leave their original faiths and they'll adopt things like Eastern Orthodox Christianity, or sorry, the Russian Orthodox Christianity, which and it's a similar thing in other places that Russia will conquer. So Russification basically was, if you need the definition, Russification is the adoption of Russian cultural values. Okay. Now, now we're going to go to Russia and the empire. Okay, so this is like with Russia, it's important to consider the fact that Russia ruled over not just like Europe, but it was ruling over vast amounts of area in Asia as well, right? But the thing is, most of the political power, most of the social power, most of the people themselves were in Europe, right? The European part of Russia. So um, the question is like, is Russia has to like struggle with the question of like whether it is European or Asian, and or is it like and that question continues to this very day, as they struggle to they struggle to figure out that identity, and so obviously they're going to be incorporating parts of the that Asian identity. They're going to be incorporating parts of the European identity, but one big thing is Westernization. Okay, so Russia saw itself as like being as Russia will increase its contact and through trade and all. Russia's gonna realize that it's quite backwards, and quite underdeveloped compared to Western Europe, and they're probably gonna be like some of the first people who will start comparing themselves to the West and trying to do catch up. Okay, this is still continuing to this very day. Many nations are trying to do the same thing. So, but Russians will probably start off the earliest. So in the case here, with Westernization, they're going to try and adopt things like the Western cultural ideas, things like the Western like economic ideas, and more. So with Peter the Great's going to do a lot of this Westernization. Okay, so he's going to be important to remember. So in the case of Peter the Great, right? Peter the Great is going to make changes to things like the administration. He's going to make changes to the things in the very culture itself. And so Peter the Great, in order to in order to make the Russia more Western, right? What he's going to do is he's going to make a new capital, which is Saint Petersburg. Okay. Um, Interestingly enough, it's actually not named after it's not named after Peter the Great. I thought, but it's actually named after a saint named Peter. Saint Petersburg, okay, um, is going to be a city, and this is going to be Russia's window to the West, okay, because it's a lot closer to the West, and so Peter the Great will make this the new capital of the Russian Empire because it's a lot closer to like the West. It's a lot closer to other places than Moscow. Moscow is a little bit more inland, okay, and so that's the important thing. The most important thing though in like this section with Russia and the Empire is the way that the Russia making an empire transformed the country itself, okay? Because Russia is going to be like very much affected by the empire they create, unlike in more Asian places. So, because when Russia expands, their wealth will vastly expand, and that wealth will cause them to be able to change a lot of aspects of their society. And another thing is that when you have like these new people in new people, then things will also change. And yeah, that's pretty much most of the important things from section 5.3. Bye.